This is your repository, and you want to add a new feature. So you pick your favorite LLM to get the job done, but you soon realize the context window is too small to fit the entire repository. So you go to your favorite AI editor to orchestrate this process for you, and voila, just like that, you have your new feature added. But you start to wonder, why does my prompt cost so much? Let's dig a little deeper. In order for Cline to help you get the job done, it needs to understand your repository first. So Cline reserves a small portion of your context window with a system prompt containing custom instructions. This proprietary instruction will cost you around 3 cents with the 3.7 Sonnet model. This means every agentic call that Cline makes, this is the base cost for each iteration. After Cline receives your request, it will start by gathering relevant files. Let's say your request was add a new GraphQL mutation for sales order. Your LLM will instruct Cline to hand over relevant files one at a time. Every file that Cline reads, it will start using up your tokens. For example, the sales.tsx file that has 700 lines of code will cost you around 2 cents. Now adding the system prompt, which is around 3 cents, the total cost of reading that one file is 5 cents. The rest of the files are calculated in the same fashion, so the entire read operation of the 4 files in total costs us 17 cents. Now that Cline has the relevant files, your LLM will now generate code. Generally, output tokens will cost you more than input tokens. So for an output of, say, 360 lines of code, it will cost you around 5 cents. So finally, we have the total. The entire operation costs you 21 cents to run on the 3.7 Sonnet model in Cline. In other words, your request to add the GraphQL mutation for sales order, Cline was able to perform this task by spending just shy of a quarter to get the job done. Now let's use this as a benchmark to start looking at how we can start cutting costs. After seeing the receipt, you might start to wonder, there's got to be a cheaper way to do this. The biggest factor in cost saving is going to come down to the model that you choose. LLM providers are the tech giants who actually create their own large language models. Here's a list of models from the LLM providers at various costs. Depending on what models you choose, the receipt will show different amounts for the same operation. For example, GPT 4.5 will cost you $4.62 to run the same operation. Cloud Opus will cost you $1.06, and the O1 model will cost you $1.01. Some providers offer their models for free, but there's usually a catch. Choosing a free model is definitely an option as long as you can work around the gotchas that tend to annoy a lot of developers. Some developers opt in for the LLM aggregators like OpenRouters, Requesty, LightLLM, Together AI, and I also included here AWS Bedrock and Google Vertex. They act as a middleman between LLM providers and the consumers to provide a single endpoint that route all your requests. Developers opt in for this because it gives them the flexibility to choose different models without signing up for each provider. One cost benefit you can have in using an aggregator is taking advantage of promotions like discounts, sign-up credits, or free usage of open source models that they host themselves on their platform. Finally, we have LLM Local, which represents open source LLMs that you either run on your machine or in a hosted environment. For example, running the DeepSeek R1 distilled model on LM Studio can give you full reassurance to not worry about API costs. And using the local models with Cline could be a viable option to cut down on cost, at least for the repetitive tasks that don't require a lot of reasoning. Now that we looked at various LLM models, let's look at some techniques that you can use to bring the cost down. Here are some methods that we can look into. Caching is a feature that some models offer that can help you cut down on cost. Cline will use caching to store the system prompt and recent conversation history, and when LLM sees there's a cache enabled and available, it will use that instead to process your request, which reduces the input token cost. Using a memory bank is playing a long game to save costs in the future. Memory bank allows Cline to store relevant metadata about you and your codebase so that your generative model generates code using less resources. To put it simply, it increases the probability of getting what's commonly referred to as one-shot prompt. Let's talk about architecture, specifically folder architecture. Some codebases are not optimized for LLMs. You can certainly cut down on costs by removing unused code, unnecessary comments or documents, refactoring large files into smaller files, naming the folders and files to reflect its use correctly, and helping your LLM to best navigate your codebase could really help reduce unnecessary work, because more work to find context means more cost. With a mix of all the tips and tricks that we discussed, you should be able to first understand how the cost structure actually works in an agentic coding tool like Cline, and two, set up your environment in a way that maximizes your cost saving.